"You're banished from your father's birthday celebration," my mom sneered with a vicious smile. "Fine," I fired back, pulled the $75,000 0 cents I'd saved for his Irish dream trip back to my account, and scrapped everything. Only to wake to 27 missed calls and a voicemail from my brother that flipped my world inside out. I was halfway through a double espresso, the kind that burns your throat and jolts your nerves awake, when my phone buzzed on the scratched oak table of my San Francisco loft. It was a Tuesday morning, the fog still thick outside, wrapping the Golden Gate in a ghostly shroud. The text was from an unknown number, no name, no context. "They're plotting against you. Trust no one in your family." My fingers froze mid-sip, the ceramic mug trembling in my hand. I read it again, the words slicing through the haze of my overworked brain. Plotting? My family? I laughed, a short, bitter sound that echoed in the empty apartment. It had to be a prank, some hacker messing with me after my latest exposé on corrupt city council members. But the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. Something about those words felt too sharp, too personal. I'm Emma Carter, 30 years old, an investigative journalist who's spent the last decade chasing truth in a world that prefers lies. My job is to dig, to uncover secrets buried under layers of charm and deceit. I've exposed shady real estate deals, busted human trafficking rings, and even brought down a mayor's aide for embezzling public funds. But nothing prepared me for the betrayal that was about to unravel my own family. My mother's voice still haunts me, her words cutting deeper than any knife. "You're not welcome at your father's birthday, Emma." She said it with a smirk, like she'd been waiting years to twist the blade. That moment shattered everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family. But what came next? Oh, it was a wildfire, one that would burn down every illusion I'd ever held and force me to fight for the only person who'd ever truly had my back. My father, James Carter. Let me take you back to where it all began, to the coastal town of Monterey, California, where the Pacific Ocean crashes against jagged cliffs and the air smells of salt and eucalyptus. Growing up, I was my father's shadow. James Carter, a Coast Guard captain with a laugh that could calm a storm, was my hero. He'd hoist me onto his shoulders during 4th of July parades, teach me to sail his battered sloop on Monterey Bay, and slip handwritten notes into my lunchbox. Little scraps of wisdom like, "You're tougher than the toughest storms, Em." Those notes got me through middle school, when braces and bad hair made me feel like I'd never fit in. Dad was my anchor, steady and unshakable, in a family that often felt like a riptide pulling me under. My mother, Margaret, was a different story. She was beautiful, the kind of woman who turned heads at charity galas with her tailored dresses and practiced smile. But to me, she was a closed door. From my earliest memories, she kept me at arm's length, her affection reserved for my older brother, Liam. 5 years my senior, Liam was her golden boy, a straight-A student, a soccer star, and now a tech CEO in Silicon Valley whose face graced Forbes' under 40 lists. Family photos told the tale. Margaret's arm around Liam, their smiles mirroring each other, while Dad and I stood slightly apart, like we were guests in our own lives. It wasn't overt cruelty, not at first. It was subtler, more insidious. The forgotten birthdays, the backhanded compliments, the constant refrain of, "Why can't you be more like Liam? I tried, God, I tried, but my best was never enough for Margaret Carter." I left Monterey at 18, chasing a journalism degree at UC Berkeley, determined to carve my own path. By 30, I'd built a name for myself at the San Francisco Chronicle, my byline synonymous with stories that made powerful people sweat. But no matter how far I climbed, Mom's voice lingered, a whisper that I'd never measure up. Liam's latest acquisition or TED Talk was always the benchmark. Her pride in him a spotlight that left me in shadow. "That's nice, Emma," she'd say when I landed a front-page story. Did you hear Liam's company just went public? Always the comparison, always the reminder that I was second best. Everything changed 2 years ago when Dad had a heart attack. I was in the middle of a stakeout, tailing a city official, when Mom's call came through. Her voice was clipped, almost annoyed, like I was an inconvenience. Your father's in the hospital. You might want to come. I dropped everything, flying down the 101 to Monterey, my heart pounding louder than the engine. Dad was pale but smiling when I reached his bedside, his calloused hand gripping mine. "Just a little scare, Em," he said, but his eyes told a different story. For 3 weeks I stayed, cooking meals, managing his meds, and ignoring Mom's pointed sighs about how I was disrupting their routine. Dad's grateful hugs made every barb worth it. Watching him fight to recover, I made a vow. His 60th birthday would be unforgettable, a gift to honor the man who'd always believed in me. I spent 3 years saving, squirreling away $75,000, 0 cents from freelance gigs and overtime. The plan was a trip to Ireland, where our ancestors, the Carters, had left County Cork in the 1800s, chasing dreams across the Atlantic. Dad used to tell stories about his great-grandfather, Seamus Carter, a fisherman who braved the famine to start anew in America. I wanted Dad to walk those cobblestone streets, to touch the soil his family had tilled, to feel the weight of our history. I booked a sprawling estate in Cork, complete with genealogy tours, whiskey tastings, and hikes along the cliffs of Moher. I even tracked down distant relatives, the O'Connors, who sent faded photos of Seamus's baptismal records. Every detail felt like a love letter to Dad, a way to say thank you for being my safe harbor. 6 months ago, I pitched the idea at a family dinner in Monterey. The dining room was all polished mahogany and candlelight, Mom's idea of casual. Dad's face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Ireland? Really, Em? You'd do that for me?" His voice cracked, and I knew I'd nailed it. Liam nodded, his tech bro charm on full display. "Solid plan, sis, I'm in." His wife, Sophie, a yoga influencer with 1 million Instagram followers, gushed about Irish castles. Even Mom seemed on board, asking about logistics with her usual efficiency. I left that night buzzing, already picturing Dad sipping Guinness in a Cork pub, his laughter mingling with the fiddle music. But the cracks started showing fast. Mom's smile at that dinner hadn't reached her eyes, a detail I missed in my excitement. Liam's texts about flight options went unanswered for days, replaced by vague, "busy with work, you got this." Sophie's replies were all platitudes. "It'll be amazing, Emma." Meanwhile, Mom found every excuse to derail discussions. I'd drive down to Monterey with travel brochures, only to find her hosting a last-minute book club or charity meeting. "Oh, I forgot you were coming," she'd say, ushering me out as her friends arrived. "We'll talk Ireland another time." That another time never came. I should have seen the warning signs, but I was too wrapped up in the dream of giving Dad something extraordinary. By February, with Dad's June birthday looming, I took 2 weeks off work to finalize plans. My loft became mission control, maps of Cork pinned to the walls, Gaelic phrasebooks stacked on every surface. I'd lie awake at 3 a.m. scrolling through photos of the estate, a stone manor with ivy-covered walls and views of rolling green hills. The O'Connors sent more records, including a letter Seamus wrote before sailing to America, his words full of hope and heartbreak. Imagined Dad reading it, tears in his eyes, feeling the pull of his roots. I booked a private tour of Cork's historic sites, a whiskey distillery visit, and a cliffside hike guided by a local historian. Every confirmation email was a piece of a puzzle falling into place. But the family's enthusiasm was fading. Mom started pushing alternatives during our weekly calls. "Your father might prefer something low-key," she said, her voice syrupy with concern. "You know how he gets overwhelmed." Overwhelmed? This from the woman who threw herself 200 guest galas every spring, complete with live bands and catered caviar? Dad, who swam laps in the Pacific every morning, was suddenly too fragile for a transatlantic flight? Liam's responses grew curt. Whatever you think, Em. Sophie stopped replying altogether. Only Dad stayed excited, practicing Gaelic with a charmingly terrible accent. Santiam, he'd say, raising an imaginary pint, his grin making every late-night planning session worth it. Then came the first real scare. I was driving home from Monterey one night, the Pacific Coast Highway twisting like a snake under a full moon. The road was empty, just me and the hum of my beat-up Jeep. Suddenly the brakes gave out. I pumped the pedal, my heart slamming against my ribs, but nothing happened. The Jeep careened toward a cliff, the ocean glittering below like a hungry maw. I yanked the wheel, skidding onto the shoulder, gravel spraying as I stopped inches from the edge. My hands shook as I called roadside assistance, the tow truck driver muttering about tampered lines. Sabotage? I dismissed it as paranoia. Journalists make enemies after all. But the cryptic text from weeks earlier echoed in my mind. They're plotting against you. Work wasn't helping. My editor, a chain-smoking ex-Marine named Carla, was breathing down my neck about a story on a shady real estate developer. Carter, you're distracted, she barked during a meeting. Wrap up this family vacation nonsense or I'm giving the story to Rodriguez. The pressure was crushing. My career, my life's work, hinged on that story, but the Ireland trip was for Dad. I couldn't let it go. Then, a week later, I got an alert from my bank. $20,000 0 cents was missing from my savings. Hackers had drained the account I'd set up for the trip, forcing me to delay bookings while I fought to recover the funds. I spent nights on hold with fraud departments, my dreams of Ireland slipping through my fingers. The family's resistance grew bolder. Mom invited me to a planning session in March and I arrived at their Monterey mansion expecting progress. Instead, I walked into an ambush. Liam and Sophie were already there, seated in the living room like a tribunal. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle. "Where's Dad?" I asked, noticing his absence. "Golfing," Mom said too quickly. Red flag number 1. She sat ramrod straight, hands folded like she was delivering a verdict. "We've been discussing your father's birthday," she began, her tone dripping with condescension. "This Ireland idea is impractical. A yacht party here makes more sense." "Impractical?" I echoed, my voice sharper than I intended. "Dad's been practicing Gaelic for months. He's thrilled about Ireland." Liam leaned forward, his CEO swagger in full force. "We've talked it over, Emma. A local party's better for everyone." "Everyone except Dad," I wanted to snap. Sophie stared at her nails, avoiding my gaze. Mom waved a hand, dismissing 3 years of my savings like pocket change. "Your father's not as young as he used to be. A transatlantic trip could be dangerous." Dangerous? Dad was fitter than most men half his age, his daily swims a testament to his strength. I argued, my voice rising, but they steamrolled me. "You're being selfish," Liam said, his words a punch to the gut. "This isn't about Dad. It's about you playing hero." Tried to compromise. "What if we do both? A party here, then Ireland for just Dad and me." The glance Mom and Liam exchanged was all I needed to know. They'd never budge. "We'll think about it," Mom lied, her tone final. I left in a daze, my Jeep's engine roaring as I sped back to San Francisco. In the driveway, Liam caught up, his voice softer but no less infuriating. "Try to see Mom's side, Em. She wants to host Dad's milestone. It's important to her." I stared at him. My brother, my rival, my stranger. "And Dad's dream isn't?" He sighed, running a hand through his perfect hair. "Just consider the party for family harmony." Harmony. What a joke. That night, I called Dad, breaking our usual routine of house phone chats. His voice was warm, concerned. "Everything okay, kiddo?" I tested the waters. "Still excited for Ireland?" His laugh was pure joy. "Are you kidding? I'm boring my old Coast Guard buddies with Cork facts. They're ready to mutiny if I mention another castle." His enthusiasm was a lifeline, proof I wasn't crazy. But when I hinted at family concerns, he brushed it off. "Who thinks Ireland's too much? I'm in better shape than most of them. Tell him to save their worries for someone who needs it." I didn't tell him about Mom's ambush. Not yet. I couldn't bear to break his heart. The next blow came a week later when I nearly lost everything. I was asleep in my loft. The city's hum a distant lullaby when the smoke alarm screamed. I woke choking, flames licking the walls where my Ireland research was pinned. Maps, brochures, O'Connor letters, all turning to ash. I stumbled out, barefoot into the hallway, the fire's heat searing my back. Firefighters pulled me to safety, but the damage was done. My research was gone, my laptop melted. The fire marshal called it suspicious, hinting at arson. I thought of the sabotaged brakes, the hacked account, that cryptic text. Someone wanted me to stop, but who and why? I rebuilt, piecing together what I could from cloud backups and memory. Dad's excitement kept me going, his voicemails full of mangled Gaelic and bad jokes, but the family's silent treatment intensified. Mom's texts were curt, party plans moving forward, talk later. Liam ignored my calls. Even Dad's responses grew vague, like he was distracted or avoiding me. I wavered, questioning myself. Was I pushing too hard? Was Ireland my dream, not his? Then, in late March, I decided to confront them. I drove to Monterey unannounced, a box of Irish shortbread in hand, a peace offering. What I found was the beginning of the end. The street outside my parents' mansion was lined with cars. Aunt Clara's Tesla, Cousin Ethan's pickup, a dozen others I recognized from family reunions. My stomach dropped. Through the bay windows, I saw movement, relatives milling about, laughing, decorating. A banner read, "James's 60th Coastal Bash, June 12th. No one had told me. I knocked, feeling like a stranger at my own childhood home, and opened the door, his smile fading. "Emma? Didn't know you were coming." "Apparently not," I said, stepping inside. The living room was party central. Streamers, catering menus, stacks of invitations. Mom emerged from the kitchen, freezing when she saw me. Her face wasn't guilty or surprised. It was annoyed. "Emma," she said, her voice flat. "We weren't expecting you." I gestured at the chaos. "What's this, a secret party committee?" She set down a tray of coffee cups, her movements deliberate. "We're planning your father's birthday, as you can see." I scanned the room. Clara, Ethan, Mom's friend Linda, even distant cousins from San Diego. Everyone but me. "Without me?" I asked, my voice low but shaking. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Mom gestured to the kitchen. "Let's talk privately." I followed, the shortbread box heavy in my hands, a pathetic shield against what was coming. The kitchen was a war zone of cake samples and seating charts, proof of weeks of planning I'd been excluded from. "Why wasn't I invited to this?" I demanded. Mom rearranged pastries, avoiding my eyes. "We didn't think you'd be interested, given your other plans." "My other plans?" I snapped. "You mean the Ireland trip I've been saving for 3 years? The one Dad's obsessed with?" She sighed, her patience a performance. "Your father's agreed a local party is best. He knows Ireland's too much at his age." "Did he say that, or did you?" I challenged. Her eyes narrowed, venom creeping into her voice. "You always think you know best, don't you, Emma? Always the perfect daughter, stealing the spotlight." The accusation hit like a slap. This wasn't about Ireland. This was something older, deeper, a resentment I'd never fully grasped. "This is about Dad's happiness," I said, fighting to stay calm. "Not your ego." She slammed a hand on the counter, plates rattling. "Why can't you accept the decision's been made? We're having a party here. Ireland's not happening." Her voice carried, silencing the next room, and felt every eye on us, the weight of their judgment. "Where's Dad?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos. "Errands," she said too fast. I pulled out my phone, calling him. His ringtone echoed from the study upstairs. "He forgot his phone," she said, but her face betrayed her. She was lying. "I'll wait," I said, pulling out a chair. Panic flickered in her eyes. "That's not necessary. We're busy." But I wasn't leaving. Not until I saw Dad. The next 15 minutes were torture, Mom fluttering around, pretending I wasn't there. Then Liam appeared, his casual tone forced. "Em didn't expect you." "No one did," I said, my voice ice. He sat beside me, lowering his voice. "This isn't personal. We just thought separate plans were easier given the tension." "Tension?" I laughed, bitter. "You mean the fact that I'm the only one listening to what Dad wants?" His jaw tightened. "You always act like your dad's only advocate, like we don't care." Her voices rose, drawing eyes again. Mom stepped between us, her face a mask of fury. "Enough, Emma. You're ruining everything as usual." That was it. The dam broke. Years of being sidelined, dismissed, compared. Every wound I'd buried surged to the surface. "What's going on?" I demanded, standing. "Why am I the enemy for wanting to give Dad a gift? Why am I excluded from his birthday?" The kitchen filled with relatives, their faces a mix of shock and discomfort. Mom looked at them, then at me, her mask slipping. "You want the truth," she said, her voice low and vicious. "We all agreed. You're not welcome at your father's party." The words were a guillotine, severing every tie I'd clung to. Gasps echoed. Aunt Clara's sharp "Margaret," the loudest. But it was Mom's smirk, that cruel curl of her lips that broke me. She'd been waiting for this, savoring it. I stared at her, this woman who'd raised me, searching for a shred of the mother I'd hoped she could be. There was none. "Good to know," I said, my voice eerily calm. I walked out, past the staring relatives, past the banner, past the life I'd thought was mine. No one stopped me. No one called after me. The silence was louder than any scream. In my Jeep, hands shaking, I made 3 calls. First to the Cork estate, canceling the booking. Second to the travel agency, scrapping flights and tours. Third to my bank, transferring the $75,000, 0 cents, back to my personal account. Each call was a death knell. 3 years of love and sacrifice erased in minutes. I sent one text to Dad. "I love you. I'm sorry I won't be at your birthday. I hope you'll understand someday." Then I blocked them all. Mom, Liam, Sophie, the aunts and cousins who'd stood by in complicity. Everyone but Dad. His line stayed open, a fragile thread of hope. I drove back to San Francisco, the Pacific a blur through my tears. My loft felt like a tomb, its minimalist decor, white walls, sleek furniture, mocking my unraveling life. I opened a bottle of Irish whiskey I'd bought for a pre-toast toast, the irony bitter as the burn in my throat. The city skyline glittered outside, indifferent to my collapse. My phone stayed face down, its silence a verdict. I was alone. Then, at 9:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Rachel, my college roommate turned confidant, holding a bag that clinked with promise. "Reinforcements," she said, pulling out wine, chocolate, and ice cream. "Your text sounded like the apocalypse. Spill." For hours, I poured out everything, the planning, the sabotage, the ambush, Mom's final blow. Rachel's face shifted from shock to fury. "Your mom's a piece of work," she said, refilling my glass. "But this is next-level evil." I nodded, the whiskey loosening the knot in my chest. The worst part is Dad doesn't know. They're lying to him, making him think I don't care. Rachel leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "So what now? You canceled everything?" "Everything," I said, the word heavy. Villa, flights, tours, gone. She was quiet, twirling her glass. Then, "What if you still went? Not for Dad, but for you." The idea was absurd, selfish, impossible, but it stuck, a spark in the dark. "Ireland? Alone?" I said, testing the words. Rachel grinned. "Why not? You've got the money, the time off, the research. Screw your family. Go for yourself." I thought of the cliffs of Moher, the pubs of Galway, the freedom of a trip with no one else's expectations. For the first time that day I felt something besides pain, a flicker of rebellion, of possibility. Rachel grabbed my laptop, pulling up travel sites. "Let's look." No pressure, just options. We browsed cottages in Galway, inns in Dublin, coastal trails in Donegal. Each click made it realer, a lifeline I hadn't known I needed. By midnight, I'd booked a stone cottage in Galway, a one-bedroom haven with a view of the Atlantic. It was nothing like the Cork estate, but it was mine. Flights to Dublin, a rental car for narrow Irish roads, a loose itinerary of hikes and pubs. Operation Solo Ireland was born. Rachel left at 1 a.m., extracting a promise to keep her updated. I crawled into bed, the whiskey and exhaustion pulling me under. For the first time in months, I slept without dreams of failure. But morning would bring a new storm, one I couldn't have predicted. The truth about my family was darker than I'd imagined, and the fight for my father's heart was just beginning. The San Francisco fog was thicker than usual that morning, a gray curtain that seemed to mirror the haze in my mind. I sat on the edge of my couch, the remnants of last night's whiskey sour on the coffee table, my phone glowing with 27 missed calls and a flood of texts I couldn't bring myself to read. Rachel's words echoed. "Go to Ireland for yourself, Emma." The Galway cottage was booked, a lifeline to reclaim something from the wreckage of my family's betrayal. But as I stared at the confirmation email, my heart wasn't in Ireland. It was in Monterey, with Dad, who I'd texted last night. "I love you. I'm sorry I won't be at your birthday. I hope you'll understand someday." I hadn't expected a reply, not after Mom's declaration that I wasn't welcome at his 60th birthday bash. Yet, at 2:17 a.m., my phone had lit up with a voicemail from Liam, my brother, his voice raw and broken. "Mom's been lying to everyone, including Dad. He never knew about Ireland. Call me back, please. Dad deserves the truth." I'm Emma Carter, a 30-year-old investigative journalist who's spent her career unearthing secrets, but nothing prepared me for the conspiracy within my own family. My mother, Margaret, had orchestrated a campaign to exclude me from Dad's milestone birthday, convincing everyone, including him, that I'd abandoned the celebration. Her smirk as she banned me from the party still burned in my mind, a wound that throbbed with every unanswered call. But Liam's message was a crack in the facade, a hint that the truth was darker and more tangled than I'd imagined. As I gripped my phone ready to dial him back, a new email pinged, an anonymous sender, no subject, just a grainy photo of Mom meeting a man in a dimly lit alley, his face obscured by a hood. The caption read, "She's hiding more than you know." My pulse spiked. This wasn't just about a birthday. This was a war for my family, and I was about to dive into the heart of it. The drive down the 101 to Monterey felt like a descent into enemy territory. The Pacific glittered to my left, deceptively serene, while my mind churned with questions. Who was the man in the photo? What was Mom hiding? And why had Liam, her golden boy, turned on her? I replayed his voicemail, his words heavy with guilt. "We've all messed up, Em. Mom told Dad you refused to be part of his birthday. He's heartbroken." The thought of Dad, James Carter, my rock, the retired Coast Guard captain who'd taught me to navigate storms, believing I'd abandoned him was a knife to the chest. I'd spent 3 years saving $75,000, 0 cents for a trip to Ireland, a pilgrimage to our ancestral roots in County Cork. I'd booked a stone manor, planned whiskey tastings, and connected with the O'Connors, distant relatives who held records of our ancestor, Seamus Carter. All of it erased in 3 phone calls after Mom's cruel verdict. But Liam's confession suggested I wasn't the only one betrayed. As I pulled into Big Sur, where Dad was hiding out at Uncle Patrick's cabin, my phone buzzed again. Another anonymous text. "Check her office. The locked box holds the key." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The locked box I'd glimpsed in Mom's office during that disastrous party planning ambush, labeled Carter Secrets, suddenly felt like a ticking bomb. I dismissed it then, too overwhelmed by Mom's smirk and the room's silence, but now it loomed large. What was she hiding? A scandal tied to Ireland? A secret about Dad? Or something worse? My journalist instincts screamed to dig, but the daughter in me just wanted to see Dad, to hold him and erase the lies Mom had fed him. The cabin sat on a bluff overlooking the Pacific, its weathered cedar blending into the cliffs. Dad was on the dock, his silhouette small against the vast ocean. He looked older, his shoulders hunched, the silver in his hair catching the morning light. The creak of the planks announced my arrival, but he didn't turn. "Dad?" I said, my voice breaking like a child's. When he faced me, his eyes were red-rimmed, his face etched with pain. "Emma," he whispered, standing shakily. I ran to him, his embrace as solid as ever, despite the storm raging in both of us. We stood there, the waves crashing below until he spoke. "Liam told me everything. About Ireland, about what you planned. I had no idea, Em." His words cracked something in me, relief and grief colliding. "I wanted it to be perfect," I said, my face buried in his shoulder. "The manor in Cork, the O'Connors, your great-grandfather's village. I saved for 3 years. He tightened his hold, his voice rough. "It would have been the greatest gift of my life." We sat on the dock's bench, the ocean stretching endless before us. For a moment, it was just us, like when I was a kid sailing with him on Monterey Bay, his laughter drowning out Mom's coldness. But the weight of betrayal hung heavy. "Why would she do this?" I asked. "Why lie to you, to everyone?" Dad sighed, running a hand over his face. "Your mother's always been complicated, insecure in ways I didn't see until now. Your bond with me, it's always threatened her. When you planned Ireland, something she could never have dreamed up, it pushed her over the edge." He pulled a folded brochure from his jacket, one I'd left at the house months ago, detailing a Cork whiskey distillery. "I found this in her safe. When I asked her, her story kept changing. First, she said you'd scrapped Ireland, then that you demanded everyone pay their own way, then that you were too busy with work. None of it added up." I stared at the brochure, noticing a handwritten note in Mom's sharp script. "Keep her away from the truth." My stomach dropped. "What truth?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Dad shook his head, his eyes distant. "I don't know, Em, but last night I found something else. A bank statement showing she withdrew $30,000, 0 cents from our joint account for the party, she said, but it's more than that. She's hiding something big." Before I could press further, a car door slammed. Liam appeared at the top of the path, his tailored suit out of place against the rugged cliffs. He approached hesitantly, his face a mix of guilt and resolve. "Can I join?" he asked. Dad patted the bench. We're just getting to the part where we figure out what to do about your mother. Liam sat, completing our uneasy trio. I think we need to confront her, he said, together. No more lies, no more manipulation. I nodded, but my mind was on the anonymous messages, the locked box, the photo of Mom with that shadowy figure. This wasn't just about jealousy. There was a secret buried deep, and I was determined to unearth it. But the world wasn't done throwing punches. As we planned our confrontation, my phone buzzed with an email from my source, Javier, a whistleblower on my real estate story. Drop the Ireland plans, Emma, or I go public with everything I know. Your family's involved. My blood ran cold. Involved? In what? The developer I was investigating, Victor Crane, had ties to Silicon Valley, where Liam worked. Was this connected to Mom's lies? Or was Javier bluffing, sensing my distraction? I couldn't risk my career, not when my exposé could expose a multi-million-dollar fraud. But dropping Ireland meant betraying Dad again. I shoved the phone in my pocket, my heart racing. Everything okay? Dad asked, his eyes sharp. Work, I lied, hating myself for it. That night, back in San Francisco, I couldn't sleep. The anonymous photo haunted me. Mom in that alley, the man's face hidden, the captions warning, she's hiding more than you know. I hacked into her email, a skill I'd picked up chasing stories. Buried in a folder labeled taxes, I found a hidden file, a scanned document, barely legible, mentioning a Carter family trust in Ireland dated 1975. My grandfather's name was on it, alongside a company I didn't recognize. Crane Holdings. Victor Crane. My heart stopped. Was Mom tied to the developer I was investigating? Was this the secret she was desperate to keep? The next morning, I drove to Monterey, determined to get into her office. The house was quiet. Mom at a charity brunch, Dad still at the cabin. I used my old key, slipping into her study. The locked box was still there, a small metal safe under her desk. My lock-picking skills, honed from a questionable source in Oakland, got me in. Inside were photos, letters, and a ledger. One photo showed Mom, younger, with a man who looked eerily like Victor Crane, standing outside a Cork pub. A letter, dated 1985, mentioned a debt the Carters owed Crane, tied to land in Ireland. My hands shook as I snapped photos with my phone. This was bigger than a birthday. This was a scandal that could destroy us all. As I slipped out, my phone pinged. A gossip blog had published my Ireland plans, mocking me as a spoiled daughter trying to buy her father's love. My hacked phone had betrayed me, leaking private texts and emails. The comments were brutal, tearing into my career, my family, my sanity. I was shaking, humiliated, when my car was suddenly boxed in by a black SUV. Two men stepped out, their faces hard. "Stay out of Monterey," one growled, slamming a fist on my hood. I floored the gas, weaving through traffic, my heart pounding. This wasn't random. Someone, Mom, Crane, wanted me silenced. Called Liam, my voice trembling. "Explain everything, now." For 45 minutes, he unraveled Mom's web. She'd intercepted my emails to Dad, deleted texts, and told relatives I was forcing an unaffordable trip. To Dad, she'd lied, saying I refused to attend his birthday. To Liam, she painted me as controlling. "She's jealous of you and Dad," he said, his voice heavy. "Always has been. When you planned Ireland, it was like you were stealing her place." I told him about the box, the ledger, Crane. His silence was deafening. "I didn't know," he whispered, "but I found a file on her laptop last night. Something about Ireland, a trust, and a payoff. This is bad." We agreed to meet Dad at the cabin and confront Mom together, but as I drove down the coast, My editor called. "Your story's out, Carter. Someone leaked it." My expose on Crane had hit the Chronicle's website, incomplete, naming names I hadn't verified, including Liam's company as a potential investor. My career was on the line, my family's drama now public. I pulled over, hyperventilating. Was this Mom's doing, Crane's? Or Javier making good on his threat? I was drowning, every choice a trap. At the cabin, Dad and Liam were waiting, their faces grim. Dad clutched the brochure, Mom's cryptic note scrawled across it. "I confronted her last night," he said. "She admitted to the lies about you, Em, but not the money. Or this." He held up the note. "Keep her away from the truth." Liam added, "She's been meeting someone. I saw her with a guy in Monterey. Looked like trouble." I showed them the photo from the anonymous email, the ledger, the trust. Dad's face went pale. "Crane Holdings. My father warned me about them before he died, said they owned us." The confrontation happened the next day, in the Monterey living room, where Mom had banished me. We sat in a triangle, Dad, Liam, me, facing her. She tried denial, then tears, then rage. "You've always been his favorite," she spat at me, her voice venomous. "From the day you were born, I was nothing to him." Dad stared, stunned. "Caroline, why didn't you tell me loving Emma didn't mean I loved you less?" Her composure shattered, decades of resentment spilling out. She admitted to therapy, to manipulating us out of fear of losing control. But the trust, the ledger, Crane. She dodged, her eyes flickering with panic. Liam pressed. "What's the Carter Trust? Why is Crane involved?" She froze, then whispered, "It's old family business. Leave it alone." But I wouldn't. I'd found a letter in the box, hinting at a land deal in Ireland gone wrong, a debt my grandfather owed Crane's father. It was why Mom wanted Ireland buried. She feared I'd uncover it. The room exploded with accusations, Dad's voice breaking as he realized 40 years of marriage were built on lies. "I'm moving to the condo," he said, his decision final. "I need space." That night, alone in my loft, I rebooked Ireland, just Dad and me. A smaller cottage in Galway, a new itinerary focused on our roots. But danger followed. In a parking garage, a man grabbed me, his grip bruising. "Drop the trip," he hissed, before I kneed him and ran. My phone buzzed with another anonymous text. "You're getting too close." I was scared, but I was done running. Dad deserved his dream, and I deserved answers. Ireland was a revelation. The Galway cottage was a stone haven, the Atlantic roaring below. We visited Ballinrobe, Seamus's village, meeting O'Connors who welcomed us like lost kin. Over a Sunday lunch under a vine-draped pergola, we pored over records from 1850, Dad's eyes wet with wonder. "This is home," he whispered, holding my hand. Free from Mom's shadow, we talked like never before, about life, loss, and love, the cliffs of Moher, the pubs of Dublin, the ancient ruins. It was our healing, our rebellion against betrayal. Back home, Mom met us at the airport, her face softer, therapy peeling back her armor. "I'd like to hear about Ireland," she said, her hug tentative but real. A week later, we gathered for Dad's birthday at a dive bar he loved, just the 5 of us. Dad, Mom, Liam, Sophie, me. No banners, no pretense, just honest talk. Mom shared her therapy journey, Liam apologized again, and Dad raised a whiskey to truth and second chances. As I drove home, the ocean breeze in my hair, I felt peace. The scars were there, but so was hope. A family rebuilt, not perfect, but real.